think those were very valid observations and wonderful participation by our expert, participants that have been present with us. I will now quickly take one or two questions, and I'll request the panel experts to comment on them very briefly because we are running short of time. So, Manish, would you like to say something quickly about the skill data mapping of the returnees? Because that's a subject which is really, because ultimately when you come back, you are having no job, no security, you are suddenly landing, and in these difficult situations, you are adding to the unemployment problems that are already there.
Sir, I will very briefly touch upon the points of the skill mapping of the returnee migrants. In fact, as many of the speakers earlier and some of the people who have asked questions have pointed out, the importance of tapping the skills, harnessing them appropriately of the returnee migrants. As we always believe, it's important for us as a country to draw the right lessons from any crisis. And as I earlier obliquely referred to the use of technology, a centralized repatriation portal that the government of India set up has worked us tremendously well. It's not only about the demand and supply management with regard to the repatriation operations, but it has also provided us an opportunity to tap the skills of the returnee migrants. Having a database of the returnee migrants' skills is extremely important for us to use them for the development of India, and even perhaps, when there is a future need for migration and these people want to migrate to their own countries of destination, probably this would be much more helpful for the foreign employers also. I distinctly
Sure.
recall earlier also through the India Center for Migration, we started the program for the PDO programs also, and we were in the process of developing an app also where we can tap the skills of these migrants, properly register them, and these databases can be seamlessly linked with the destination countries. We started this program with the Saudi and the UAE, where our electronic systems were to be aligned, the e-migrant system with the Saudi's e-Tawfiq and the program for the UAE also.
Okay.
Perhaps we are moving in the right direction. Its only thing is how fast we can implement it and put it on a realistic footing. Thank you, sir.
Right. Thank you, Manish. I have a question, which is I would like Dr. Thomas Matthew to respond to. This is from Lizzie Joseph, who wants to know, is it possible to create a strong network of the stakeholders, and how can we do that?
Yes, sir. Yes, Sister Lizzie was what asked was correct. It is the need of the hour because so many issues, so many problems are there. So different stakeholders in the migration process should be networked together and to find out a way. They have to sit together, find out a way how to deal with these things. It should be there. When saying all these things, we have to see. I talked about the wage theft and salary theft happening right now. How this can be? These workers, they are all contract workers. They are on short-time basis. So mostly they are on coming on a visit visa and all 3 months, 5 months, or 1 year job and going back. These kind of workers are there. So those kind of workers, they are not, their salaries are not given in this condition. So we have to find a mechanism to compensate properly to these people. I am experienced about the UN compensation. I was in the Iraqi invasion time here in Kuwait, and I was one. We lost everything. I was a refugee, and I came back, and there was some compensation mechanism was there. Like that, Mr. Rafiq a while ago, he was telling about the transitional justice mechanism. So we have to think in terms of that. We have to see that the wage theft is not happening. All the contract workers, the migrant workers, they should be get their rightful wages and salaries and remunerations, whatever is entitled to them, they should get it. and they have, when they are repatriated, they must not be forcefully repatriated. Nowadays, everything is happening forcefully. It is not repatriation; it is deportation. Most of the it is happening. So that should be stopped. We have to see that the post-COVID scenario, wherein this kind of forced repatriation, deportation, and that should not happen. We have to see, we have to find a mechanism. Maybe somebody will say it is not possible, maybe thinking, but it should happen. We have to work together. A network has to come together to see that this is happening on the ground. Why these regional bodies like Colombo Process and Abu Dhabi Dialogue? The dialogue should not, if the dialogue is continuing, let it continue. But something on the ground, action should be there.
So we have these two, I think, interesting.
One more thing, sir. I mean, regarding the compensation side, there are so many workers died because of the COVID here. In this kind of this thing, their family, their earning member is lost all of a sudden. And these countries of destination have the complete responsibility to see that they are sufficiently compensated. If a traffic accident or insurance this thing is happening, there is a compensation mechanism. So a compensation mechanism should be there, a sufficient this thing to be support their families should be done, and also the country of origin, they have their responsibility. They cannot shy away from that. Even I am talking about if India government have to set apart a fund and give 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs, whatever. They have to give to the families of these deceased because of the COVID conditions. So these are the things. There are many other issues.
Very well said.
Short of time, I am stopping here.
Yes,
but the transitional justice is one point where we have to see that the worker is getting their rights. That's all, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Next question is to Ambassador Nachida Soban. This is about governments of South Asia getting together to work in this particular crisis. What are your thoughts? Prime Minister Modi did interact with all the SAARC countries to begin with, and we have set aside some funds also. But there is this question from one of the participants: can government of South Asia come together?
Thank you, Excellency Ambassador Muley. I would say that from Bangladesh side, and also personally, I think that South Asian regional countries need to be together on this. It is a journey that we need to do together, and it is possible. As you have rightly mentioned, that Prime Minister Modi of India did have a talk with the other member countries, and also SAARC member countries, and there has been a fund activated. I do not know, I do not have the current situation of the fund, how much is collected there, and whether any particular mechanism has been set up for the use of the fund. That needs to be seen. What is the mechanism? What is the protocol for the use of that fund, and how that can be used? But it is certainly a time where we need to work together, not only in the headquarters, but also in the countries of destinations where we have missions from these South Asian countries in the same city where we have missions. So I would very much say that we can work together, and we should. If I have some comments for some of the other comments made. So can I do it now or later?
Quickly, yes, quickly go over.
Okay, very good. I see there is some generalized comment about all the missions not doing anything. I would differ on that. And if you listen to Sumita very correctly, I think her speech was evident that yes, there are missions that are working and stepped up out of there. I mean, there are a lot of missions from all the countries of South Asian region that have, punched over their weight. For my mission, I worked with only 2 people, and I've seen a lot of other missions doing that, the same thing. Yes, there are some missions that have not been able to do things the way they were expected to do because they were overwhelmed, but there are missions that have worked a lot. Here, another thing I would like to say that a lot depends on the countries of destination as well. how they are also cooperating with the missions. But at the end, if we put too much emphasis on the work of and the responsibility of the mission, we are missing out one thing. We are putting all the emphasis on the responsibilities of countries of origin. But as I said at the very beginning, that it needs to be, so we also have to see and talk about and emphasize on the role and the responsibility of countries of destination, not only on the countries of origin. And I think Farooq Ahmed from Bangladesh mentioned one thing about social issues. I'm very glad that you have mentioned it, because if you remember, during the chairmanship of GFMD of Bangladesh, when Bangladesh was chairing GFMD, we included 3 sub-themes. One was economy, one was governance, and very importantly, we also included the social issues and another sub-theme. Now, lastly to say, you know that even the countries individually are doing a lot for the compensation of the workers. I can say from Bangladesh, our Honorable Prime Minister has announced a specific, very specific fund for the expatriate Bangladesh, and we have already started handing over the funds for those who are going back, but also for those who have died during COVID, and giving funds for their as compensation for their family members. So
Right.
countries are in it, but we have our challenges as well, and we commit to work together to fix those challenges. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think those were very interesting responses. I have 2 more questions. We'll quickly take them. And one is from Mr. Om Prakash Manji. He's asking how the structure of health schemes in the countries, destination countries, has changed from pre-COVID times. Can someone, because I don't know whom to address this question exactly, can anyone volunteer to respond to this, please?
Maybe I can try.
Yeah, please go, Smita, Krishna.
Well, pre-COVID, I must say, example, in Malaysia as a destination country, migrants, undocumented migrants did not have access to medical. They had access to private medical if they could afford it, but not to government medical. And documented workers were dependent on their employers for access to medical, because they had to have insurance, and they had to have the necessary paperwork from the employers to seek medical to government medical. But during the COVID, this changed because, of course, to contain the spread of the virus, the medical system was open to everyone, regardless of their undocumented status. So undocumented workers as well as documented workers, everyone had access, free treatment as well as free screening in medical facilities. So that was one of the good things that was done in Malaysia. Of course, later the government retracted that and began detaining persons who were under a particular area, a restricted area. So that was not a positive thing. But then prior to that, it was a good move to allow all persons access to medical. So it shows that it can be done. It shows that the government can provide medical for everyone if it wanted to. So this is something that we should welcome, and I think the host country as well as the country of origin should work towards providing medical for all. The remittances that the countries of origin obtain, and the levies that the countries of destination obtain from migrant workers, that kind of benefit should be used to provide medical, to provide benefits to the migrants themselves, because the migrants are the ones who are bringing out this money. So these are some of the funds that could be used for the benefits of the migrant. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to ask the last question. Maybe Ambassador Jayasurya or MS Josen Naun could respond to this. This is about what are the learning lessons for the sending states in the COVID-19 times. Is Ambassador Jayasurya, would you like to respond, ma'am?
Thank you very much. I think it's a very pertinent question for us to take home following this unprecedented scenario. As said very well, we were prepared to respond to normal time consular issues, but many missions were overwhelmed. But the positive side of this whole issue is that when the missions were collaborating with the help of all the stakeholders on the ground and on the destination countries, that there is some level of confidence being built, and which we should be using this aspect to respond to any future crises that are to become. And for example, in Sri Lanka, we had the Foreign Employment Bureau Fund, which was dedicated only for those registered migrant workers. But with the COVID situation and then with the database developed, we realized that there were more undocumented irregular migrants. And then with the cabinet decision, this fund was extended to those undocumented or those who were irregular status. So these were some of the better coordination and also identifying the issues on the ground. And then one other critical issue that has been discussed in this panel was about the migrant health. And we, within some of our regional forums, particularly in Colombo process, had tried to address this issue, but which didn't garner that much support and attention. So this particular unprecedented health crisis has given us an eye-opener why we should invest more on migrant health. And particularly the other aspect, in time to come after post-COVID, there will be more economic and related trade commerce issues which will be done on digital platforms. So we should, as countries, especially sending countries, to be ready to grapple with this new normal and to prepare our workforce to respond in such a manner. One last point about the female migrant workers, which is very sensitive. And we all, as developing countries, we have our migrant women mostly migrating out of desperation for economic needs. But then we also have to better equip them through better training and also pre-departure orientation, so that they will be not only skilled in particular niche areas, caretakers or caregivers, so that they will be able to get more uh, defined wages and defined rights, and the missions will be able to protect their rights better. So these were, I think, some of the lessons. And also in the multilateral system, we talked about the GCM. So now it is time for us to candidly look inward to see what has worked, what has not worked, and what would have worked better for us if we had certain policies and guidelines and more forward-looking collaboration. So this is a time, I think, a challenge that as well as an opportunity for us to better reformulate, transform our own responses. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think you have summed it well. Time to see what has worked and what has not worked. I think that actually the tagline, that should be the tagline of the entire webinar that we have had today. We have, would you like to add anything, Ms. Josein Naun, please? In case you have, then we'll listen to you, and otherwise we'll move to the closing session quickly. I think perhaps Madam is not around. We shall proceed. Let me, in the closing part 3, I would request the panelists to say in a minute's time your own observations, or what are the takeaways that you think came from this particular webinar, or anything else that you not said. A minute each, considering that we have crossed the time limit set for ourselves. Please, can I start from the reverse order? Madam Samantha Jayasurya, in case you wish to add anything to what you have said. If you don't have, we can move also. There's no issue. Your mic is off, ma'am. Can you put on your microphone? Yes.
Can you hear me? Yeah. I think I tried to sum up thinking that it was my final comment, but I guess I want to say that we take this challenge as an opportunity, and to see what went wrong or what has worked, and then build on as collectively, and at the same time there will be a lot of best practices around us. So it is a time bilaterally as well as multilaterally to garner these and help ourselves to look for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Then Ms. Smita Krishna, in case you wish to say anything in conclusion that we missed so far.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight one pertinent issue that has been a problem in Malaysia and for migrants here is that migrants who wish to return back to their home countries are required to go through a COVID test, a mandatory COVID test, and quite a number of the sending countries are imposing the test. Not all, just some. But the problem here is the cost of that COVID test is extremely expensive. It's almost about 80 to 90 USD. And for a migrant worker, it's a very large sum of money to pay, especially since they have not been working for 3 months prior to their departure, or even for tourists who have been stranded here, and just about for everyone who has not been able to go back. So imposing that kind of requirement, I think it may be a little bit counterproductive. So and especially when we don't have enough test kits in the country to provide for everyone. So I think the country of the sending country needs to relook at this policy to ensure that you need to take back your migrants who want to go back, but not impose this kind of restriction. I think it's not really working out that well for migrants here who want to return. Thank you.
Right. Very valid point. Manish Gupta.
So very quickly, I will just touch upon 4 points which I feel. The first point, I think the important lesson is we need to draw the right lessons for the governance of migration. We need to work together with the destination countries and also recognize this is always going to be a slow moving process. We will have incremental outcomes, but nonetheless, we must continue to insist on it. Second point, in our respective frameworks, we need to prioritize the most vulnerable. It's very easy to said and done, but it really requires a strong political will and a lot of work on the part of the foreign offices also. In the Indian case, the Indian Community Welfare Fund has worked exceedingly well. But then I must really thank, the political will that was there in our system to put it off the mark the way we wanted it to be. The third point, we need to focus on using the technology and the social media. Many a times, those who are in the bureaucracy, they think technology is very, very different and very challenging animal. It's not like that. Each one of us in the missions, consulates, within the ministry, we can use it for our own benefit. It will be helpful in building up the databases and registering the skilling set of migrants, which can be put to better use. And lastly, we must continue to reform and improve our systems. Feedback is exceedingly important. All the community organizations, the workers who are being represented here, please continue to share your feedback with us. And the last request, please slightly be patient. All the missions, consulates, wherever in which part of the world, the governments, they take your feedback seriously and they work on it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think very important points, including we have to be patient. Yes. Can I request Thomas Matthew to conclude, his own observations? And is there anything left? A minute, please, sir. Your microphone is not on. Yes.
Yes, sir. I'll put everything in 1 or 2 points. One is that in this crisis conditions, this is a global crisis condition. There was a MIKI initiative, Migrants in Countries in Crisis. There is an initiative under the UN, and there is a report also. But the countries failed, or the UN failed to implement these kind of things prior to that one. So at least now on, we have to see that these kind of initiative and the reports, because I attended some of these conferences, and there is a report is there. So we have to see that this Make It initiative is taken care of, and it is put into practice by all the missions throughout the world. Then this kind of crisis conditions can be overcome. This is one point. The other thing is that there is a ICW fund. There is an Indian Community Welfare Fund is there. There is a huge fund is there. There is a political will is lacking. I am talking about India. There is a political. This is the money which we have given to the distressed people to take care of them. Why the government of India is not giving directives to the embassies to make use of this one? The distressed people are there. In this condition, why it is not given? This is one point I wanted to ask to the Indian authorities. This is one thing. And also, the embassies are shying to work with civil society organizations. More than the embassies, many of these civil society organizations have worked, and they have done a lot of work. And they're the small and large scale work they were doing. Even the repatriation, even the giving food and other all kind of facilities. These civil society organizations were in the forefront, but they are not at all recognized, or a coordinated work was missing, and that is why an effective way of doing fighting the crisis we failed. If we failed, we can say. That's all. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I think from my personal experience, I can say that the ICWF funds are mostly at the discretion of ambassador, with the certain limits. But anyway, this is a point of technical information which can be sought from Minister of External Affairs.
One thing I can tell, let me add, we have taken a court order to say that this fund is to be utilized. We have taken. Similar thing has happened with the amnesty in Kuwait. I have written to the Prime Minister, the ambassador, the ministers, everything. Nothing happened. But I was forced to go to the Supreme Court to get a directive, and after that only the government started acting, and the repatriation process was done for the amnesty people here in Kuwait. So this is it's a political will is lacking.
Okay, I do appreciate your point that sometimes the policy decisions in the head in a home foreign ministry, it does take time, and the embassies are put sometimes at some awkward position. But anyway. Thank you for making that point. I will request, before I request the last panelist to speak, Ms. Elena Sana, who is from, to give us perspective from the Philippine point of view about this thing. And then in the end, I will request our ambassador, Nashida Sobam, to have so-called the last word. Is Ms. Elena Sana is around? Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so I think just to iterate the point that for countries like the Philippines, we do not have enough number of embassies to cover all our people. Like we are in 238 countries and we only have like 18 embassies, consulates, and much less number of labor offices. So I think the point is, and this is mentioned several times already during the discussion, we need to really strengthen cooperation and collaboration with our counterpart missions from other countries of origin. At the same time, and making exchanges of information and best practices. So, for example, how do you combat trafficking, and how do you get rid of unscrupulous recruiters and employers even? You share the information. We're all working, our migrant workers are working in one destination, and the recruiters in those destination countries will be going to all our countries. So you have the information, and I think it would be very good. It would serve the interest of all our migrant workers. We will be sharing this information that we have as per our experiences. Of course, it's been mentioned already many times, especially by by Thomas, the need to also give recognition to members of the community, the migrant community, the diaspora community, that always rise up, especially in public emergencies, public health emergencies such as this pandemic. And I think it's only like proper that we accord them not only the recognition but also the respect that you are indeed our partners, not only in times of need, but also that make it real and providing them slots or voices in policy making, in consultations, that they should be given the voice, to be consulted directly. I think it's quite important to do that, not only the countries of origin, but especially also in the countries of destination, and the missions can facilitate those spaces for the migrants and for the organizations of migrants. Definitely, I think at the end of the day, especially in pandemics such as this one, we need to look after not only of our own migrant workers, but of all the migrant workers, negotiating with the countries of destination. If we need to get visas, so our workers will have to be repatriated and those things, we need the missions to do that. Especially in the Gulf where migrant organizations have very limited access direct access to the host governments. We need the missions to facilitate those linkages so that our workers will be less burdened, especially in these times. I think that's all I wanted to say, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Sorry for very little time we could give you, but we are about to conclude now. So last word, Ambassador Nashida Soban, Excellency.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Mule. I would like to focus on three things which I previously mentioned, except for one. One is about the cooperation, the partnership at the regional level as well as the global level. In the regional level, it has to be within the countries of origin, but also engaging with the countries of destination. So at the regional level, partnership and cooperation, and also international level partnership and cooperation. And the role of UN has to be emphasized, because that's where we always count on. I still believe in multilateralism because I have spent most of my career time in multilateralism, so I still believe in it, but it has to be reinvigorated. And one thing is missing from UN is their engagement on migration and migrants issues. Here, I would say at the global level, yes, political will is one thing that needs to be emphasized, and we need to look into it. Secondly, one thing I think we have discussed about a lot of things, but one thing is missing from our discussion, which I would like to add. It is the responsibility of the migrants themselves. Their responsibility in engaging with the embassy and in engaging with the missions work, and also cooperating with the mission, and also about their status in every countries of destination. And lastly, which I have also mentioned about, like at the very beginning, I talked about the scope of MIKIC. We need to take a look into it. If it doesn't work, then we need to probably think about similar kind of mechanism whereby we can address the situation of migrants, particularly destitute and vulnerable migrants in the times of crisis. And there I would say that we need to really come up with some kind of mechanism in whatever form it is, in a very short period of time. We cannot have something like 2 years of discussion or negotiation to come up with that kind of mechanism. And it has to be like we cannot wait for another crisis to come and then we have this kind of mechanism. It is of urgency that we talk about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think you really summed up well. Now it's thank you, the panelists, and now I come to the closing. Since the time is very, very short, I'll just, rather than going in details, I'll wrap up by mentioning the points that have emerged. We can call them takeaway or concluding points. We need to have short-term, medium-term, and long-term thinking on this and plan. That's number one. Number two would be, there has to be a better coordination among various stakeholders. Somebody mentioned PPP mode, civil society organizations, and a prominent role to them Just now you mentioned about the responsibilities of the migrant workers themselves. They should be, of course, at the center of this debate and this discourse. Next one is the regional, multilateral, and international organizations. They have to be much, much more proactive in this, and including UN. You said UN, but I see in the 17, SDGs, there is no specific provision about labor or workers, if I remember them correctly. Next is the information infrastructure. We call it in various ways, but information gaps have to be filled in at various places, whether it is data about those who want to return, whether it is skill mapping that has to take place, all kinds of, because this data will be ultimately very useful to every stakeholder. Next one, these are not necessarily in order of priority. Next one is women, vulnerability about, particularly, and a focus and a separate approach to deal with the problems that the women workers face abroad. Next is, SOPs, best practices, political will. I would, I'll put them in one set, because without political will, nothing can move. There has to be very, fast and very strong decisions at the headquarters. And for that, political will has to be very much there. Communication and coordination is a other issue that needs to be addressed very, very seriously. We have to focus on undocumented workers, because again, this is a different set of workers who need special attention. Highlighting the role of host governments at destination countries, because I think what have they done, what they can do, and how can it be a stronger partnership at local level bilaterally between the missions and the host governments. I think that's an important point that we need to really look at. Someone mentioned a very important point about the coordination among the missions. There has to be more interaction and exchange of views, among various missions at the destination countries, because that will help us in getting to know what is happening in terms of handling of these workers. Strong network of stakeholders, we discussed that. Empowering the missions in terms of human resources, in terms of manpower, in terms of equipments related, which will help them in better communication, faster communications. So in terms of resources to be made available to the missions, empowering. Thomas Matthew mentioned about the role of the welfare funds and how they are utilized. And last but not the least is return of workers. There has to be a very different set of approaches or strategies or measurements that handles the returning, because I don't see, because in India the responsibility is with the states, and the states are not often proactive in taking up these issues. Lastly, which is not directly related to this thing, but again a very important, and somebody did touch upon it, is the human policies or human approach of the missions. We have to be sensitive to the vulnerabilities. We have to be compassionate as missions. Then only we'll be able to extend the necessary assistance and help. I really rest my case there. I would like to thank the experts. I'd also like to thank the participants, panelists, for a wonderful and very vibrant discussion, if I may describe it in those adjectives. Thank you very much. I would now request Ms. Raula Amati from the Cross Regional Center for Refugees and Migrants to give her concluding remarks and close with vote of thanks to everybody present here. I would like to thank personally Mr. William Goy, Dr. Sadanand Sahu, Ms. Raula Hamati, and Mr. Shabri Nair of Ireland. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador Moulay. It's been a very rich discussion today on missions and the role of missions. In a very difficult migration journey, oftentimes missions are the home away from home. Unfortunately, sometimes we still see many migrant workers being turned away at the doors of missions. This webinar has been really a very rich discussion on going further, a step further, and really realizing what missions could be, the potentials of missions, of being more inclusive and more responsive of migrant needs, more responsive of documented workers, more responsive of undocumented workers, women migrant workers, all of the employment problems that we talked about today. We hope that this conversation does not end here today. We hope that this is something that we will continue to take forward. And we hope that this will continue with all of the people that were here today. On behalf of the Cross-Region Center for Refugees and Migrants, Migrant Forum in Asia, and the Global Research Forum on Diaspora and Transnationalism, we would like to thank our 6 panelists who did an amazing job today. We would like to thank Ambassador Samantha Jayasuriya, Ambassador Nahida Subhan, Consul General Manish Gupta, Thomas Matthew, Sumita Krishna, and Josiane Noon for their wonderful contributions today. And also a big thank you for you, Ambassador Moulay, for leading us in this discussion and leading us in the preparations as well. And we hope that you will continue to lead us going forward in the follow-up work that we hope that will come out of this webinar. So on behalf of the organizer, we thank you all. We thank all the participants that have participated, and we also thank the team that was behind making this possible. Thanks everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you, Ramla.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care and all the best. Take care of your health, particularly in these difficult times, so we can at least continue to speak on.
Yeah,
it's also important that
I would like to inform all of you that I was also under the COVID.
Right. Okay. I hope, Shabri, we are off the line.